I'm Noel De Villiers, the structural engineer for the project with my company ADA Consulting Engineers. So the structural framing is, the building, the house is on 3 levels. The lower level is built into the slope of the mountainside with concrete and brick retaining walls, forming the plinth from which then the upper 2 levels are a steel framed structure with steel columns and beams which then support reinforced concrete floor slabs at each level. So all of the steel columns go up through the building and then get through to the top and support the roof structure. And then on each level, the reinforced concrete floor slabs, they act as plates, structural plates to brace the building in the floor at each level. And then vertically the bracing is incorporated by means of a combination of some portal action and then steel bracing within the clad elements of the building. Unfortunately, there are few clad elements, so it was a restrictive factor. Then the roof structure is a steel rafters and steel purlins, all mostly exposed structural elements as the roof covering. A big challenge was the fact that the structural elements are all expressed. The structural steel frame as well as the reinforced concrete floor slabs, what we put up as the structural framing is the finish, and as a result of that, fine attention to detail had to be paid to ensure that the connections were made in a finished manner, a manner that could be left as the finish. Nothing was going to be clad or covered up, and a definite challenge was getting the polished concrete reinforced concrete floor slabs into as a power floated concrete slab within the web of the steel beams that were supporting it. So it was those connections between the concrete slab and the steel frame. Another challenge was the steel, just within the steelwork, the column to beam connections. We had to be very careful that we had watertight sealed connections because there wasn't any other form of sealant happening at those junctions. Plus the junctions between the glazing elements, the aluminium glazing and the steel frame, the steel columns and the steel beams had to be done in a way, detailed in a way that that they were watertight, and that was challenging. Another aspect that was challenging was the fact that it was a very restricted site. Access to the site was very restricted, up a steep panhandle driveway, which meant that all the steel elements that came to site had to firstly be brought in small enough sections that they could be brought onto site without a heavy crane to do the work. Plus then they had to get pulleyed up into position. So that was a challenge. So the fabrication and erection process, that was handled through the main contractor, but we had to interface significantly with the fabricators. The fabricators prepared their fabrication drawings for the structural steel work, and what made it interesting and also more challenging in this instance was the fact that they did all of those drawings by hand rather than using sort of conventional steel detailing programs. So that did make that process more challenging. It made it more difficult for themselves because they had to ensure that everything fitted together and the connections all worked, which, being the finished product and not being closed up, it was important that that was done correctly the first time. We were also quite careful to ensure that the steelwork was prepared and brought to site galvanized so that there wasn't any site cutting and welding, because it is an exposed steel frame building and it is, in a coastal area. And then, just the process was also complicated by the fact that they needed to get the steel framing up to a floor level and then cast that concrete floor so they could use that as a platform then to build up to the next level, which was an interesting way of doing it, rather than just going and putting the entire steel frame up first. But it meant that it simplified their erection process, but made it a little bit more complicated as well. So the project illustrates the benefit of steel as a structural material very well, in that firstly, the steel is reflected, the structure is reflected as the finished product, and we were able to come up with a very elegant and an elegant and beautiful structure that really did satisfy the architect's wishes and requirements, and therefore the client. And it reflects that the structural system can be used elegantly as the finished product without it having to be clad to make it look more elegant. I'm very proud of the fact that the project was finished as elegantly and beautifully as it has. It was a challenge to bring together the client's as well as the architect's wishes, and then to put that into a structural form that worked structurally and that I was satisfied with could work. And on completion, through a difficult design and construction phase, we're very proud and pleased that the ultimate finished product was the elegant and beautiful building that the client as well as